about being is temporal, and one of the important aspects of temporality is my death. So I said Heidegger is making a very important, very meaningful meditation or reflection on human death. Death, according to Heidegger, is the most authentic event of my life. Death, according to Heidegger, is the most authentic event of my life. Why? Why death is the most authentic event of my life? Because in death, I face myself. In death, I am facing myself. I cannot hide myself, escape from my death. I can escape from many things, but I can't escape from my death. You may run anywhere, but death will follow you. You can't escape. You have to face death. And when you face death, you have to face it alone. You can't take somebody else with you. Other things you can take somebody else with you. But in death, nobody will come with you. In death, you are alone. Nobody will follow you. You have to die alone. You cannot die somebody, this one, what is that? You cannot ask somebody else to die for you. Of course, somebody else can die for you once. But when your death comes, you have to die yourself. And you have to face death on your own. You cannot say, now I don't know what to say, how to face death. You have to face. Somewhere or the other, you have to face. That's why Heidegger calls it as the most authentic event of my life. Why it is the most authentic event? Because I cannot be hypocrite. I cannot hide myself. I will have to face death. And in death, I can't say, I have to be myself. It's like facing yourself in the mirror. It's myself, facing myself in the mirror. It makes me realize that I am alone. It isolates me from all other things and makes me authentically myself. In fact, Heidegger says, death is the only event in my life which is uniquely mine. It is uniquely mine, means it is my own. It is my own. There is nobody else in death. I face death face to face. Nobody else is there. Therefore, it is the most authentic action of my life, or it is really my own and totally separated from others. In death, I am alone. What does it mean? I am alone. It means that it is mine. In all other things, somebody else can accompany you. In all other things, somebody can be at your side. In all other things, you can take others' opinion. In all other things, you can take it from Google. You can copy from Google or from your companions. People take from Google or from companions. Whereas when it comes to death, Google cannot help me. I have to go myself. I cannot copy somebody else's notes. Not possible. I have to copy my own notes. Meaning to say, I have to be myself. That's why Heidegger calls death as the most authentic event of my life. Death as the most event which is uniquely mine. Death, he calls it as my very self facing death. And death, nobody else can substitute me. Am I clear?
Yes, Father.
Yes,
Am I
Father.
clear about
Yes,
what I am
Father.
talking about death?
Yes, Father.
Yes, Father.
This is not my opinion. This is the opinion of Martin Heidegger, which is a beautiful reflection. It is true. When other person died, No, nobody, none of us have experienced what death is. None of us can tell what death is. What is death? We do not know. We do not know. What exactly happens during death? We do not know. Because nobody has told us. We have heard the death of our near and dear ones. When somebody of our near and dear one dies, it's only a reminder for us. This is only a reminder. Well, he or she has gone. One day my time will come. My time will come. But I have not experienced death so far. When will I experience death? The day I am dying, I experience death. That's all. And how is it? How is that experience? I don't know. I have to face myself. Because my death is my death. It's mine. Nobody else's death is my death. Others' death is only a reminder for me. But my death is my death. What really is death? That I will have to experience on the day of my death. So that's why it is one of the most significant aspects of being. One of the important aspects of being is death. And Heidegger says, we live in time. What happens before our birth? We don't know. What happens after our death? We don't know. Religion says, or faith says that after death there is afterlife. That is faith. Heidegger is not in the realm of faith. Keep that in mind. That is our faith. That we say that after death there is life. That is faith. That is our religion. But Heidegger is not in that. He is speaking like a pure philosopher. He is speaking like a pure philosopher, where he says, my existence is only existence in the world. There is no existence outside the world. So was there anything before my birth? I do not know. That's why he says, I am thrown into the world. I am thrown. Nobody asked me, do you want to come into the world? Nobody asked me. Is there anybody who was asked, do you want to come into this world? Anybody was asked here? Anybody was asked?
No, Father.
Huh?
No.
Rajesh, where you
No
asked?
one, no one. No, Father. Nobody asked me. I don't know why.
Nobody asked. Nobody asked us, do you want to go into the world? So we were thrown, according to Heidegger, we were thrown into the world. Thrown. We don't know why we were thrown. I don't know why I was thrown. We were thrown into the world. And we live. How long do we live? That Heidegger says we don't have time. And according to Heidegger, the day you are born, you are old enough to die. The day you are born, you are old enough to die. So there is no time that I should die after 80 years, I should die after 100 years, or I should die before that. No, there is no time. The day you are born, you can die on the same day. There are certain babies who are dead on the very first day of their birth. They're dead. There are people who live for some years. There are people who live for long years. There are people who live for 100 years or more. Depends. So each one of you lives, I don't know how long. How long? My friend Stephen may live for 95 years. Gleason, after eating so many idlis and dosas, may live for another 85 years. Lloyd, my friend, strong man, he also eats and drinks. So he may live for another 70 years.
20 more years. 20 years, Father.
After eating too much.
Heart attack.
My
Kidney.
friend Sugesh, I don't know how long he is going to live.
Rakesh also,
Robin,
Father.
my friend,
Rakesh,
they live
Rakesh.
long.
Yeah, and Chiranjeevi.
Dominic Savio,
Next year.
30.
No, Father, I will live. Still the world is a
Dominic Savio, he says he will live for a long time.
No, Father, today you will die.
Who?
Today you will die.
Someone will kill him.
Dominic
Dominic.
will
No,
die today.
Dominic will not die. You should not die today.
yeah, because of
He
your
is a
plan
good
now I
fellow.
will
You
die,
keep
Father.
quiet. Dominic is a good fellow. He has to live for another 70 years.
Oh, Dominic.
Ah.
Oh my God.
My friend, maybe
His stomach will be more.
another.
I
They
am
may
here,
live for
sir.
long. So you see, all of you are young boys.
100
You
years.
are all young boys.
What about me,
You are
Father?
in your teenage. You are almost in the cradle.
What about
So
you,
very
Father?
long time maybe. We do not know. We do not know.
What about you, Father?
What about you, Father?
I am also very strong, you know. Am I strong or not?
110.
Am I strong or not?
Yes,
Yes,
Father.
Father.
Then so I'm also very strong, like my friend Nebin. I'm also strong.
How is your leg, Father?
Leg is also strong. You see? So, so we do not know.
Very good.
Any person can die at any time. We should be ready to die at any time and face death, which is part and parcel of my existence. And that brings me into my authenticity. So death, in death, I face myself. In death, I face myself. Death is like a mirror to me in which I face myself. In that context, Heidegger is bringing another very important dimension of my existence, and that is the question of my conscience. The question of my conscience. So, what
Read the
is
fourth point,
conscience?
Father.
What is conscience? Conscience, according to Heidegger, is a voice within me. It's a voice within me which helps me or recalls to me to come back to myself, calls me back to myself. It calls me back to my authentic life. When I go away, when I go astray, conscience is like a voice which calls me back to myself, to be myself. The voice of conscience it helps me to choose the right things in life, existence. In existence, we have a lot of choices. In existence, we have a lot of choices. But conscience helps me to make an appropriate choice. Helps me to make an appropriate choice. What exactly I should choose. It calls me back from my inauthenticity. Somebody else also can write a half a page, 1 page on Heidegger's concept of conscience. Heidegger's concept of conscience. Any volunteers? Heidegger's concept of conscience. Any volunteers? Any volunteers? Looks like everybody has gone away.
Yes, Father.
Everybody disappeared, man.
No, Father.
Any volunteers to write half a page, 1 page about Heidegger's concept of conscience? You know who Joel is writing. You see, Joel also is a good fellow. Joel, you send us, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So conscience calls me back to myself, to my inner self. Conscience tells me to face my inner capabilities resolutely, not to forget myself in this thing or that thing. Very important. Conscience tells me, let me not be lost in this thing and that thing. Meaning to say what? Meaning to say that conscience tells me this thing and that thing is not my thing. Means I should not be lost in the things which I see in the world. I am different from the things. Conscience tells me, you are yourself. So it calls me back to myself. Calls me back to myself. Calls me back to myself. So conscience is a continuous voice from within. Conscience is continuous voice from within, calling me back to be authentic, to be sincere to myself, to take up my responsibilities, to move away from unnecessary things, to feel uneasy when I do wrong things, to feel uneasy when I do wrong things. So that is the conscience, role of conscience. Another very important aspect of being, another very important aspect, third or fourth aspect, whichever the number is, Heidegger says being is being always with other beings. Being is being always with other beings. Being is being with. To be is to be with. We have seen this earlier somewhere. To be is to be with. Anybody recalls? To be is to be with.
Martin Buber, Father.
Metaphysics,
Not metaphysics.
Martin Buber.
In metaphysics, we have studied further.
Martin Buber, Father.
It
Martin
was
Buber.
Martin
Existential
Buber.
philosophy.
It was Martin Buber. Also, to a certain extent, Gabriel Marcel. Martin Buber and Gabriel Marcel. Martin Buber as well as to be, we always exist with the other. I am not alone in this world. I share a world with the other. I am not alone in this world. I share my world with the other. I live with the other. Gabriel Marcel will call it as a community. I live in a community. I live with the other. I live in a community. I cannot live as an island. I cannot live as an island. No man can live as an island. We sing that now.
Yes,
So I
Father.
cannot live as an island. The other is part and parcel of my existence. The other constitutes part and parcel of my existence. To be is to be with. I have in the notes on page 17, you will see. To the being is with, mit sein. That's a German word. Mit means with, sein means being. To be is to be with the other. It opens me to the other. I'm not a closed entity. I'm not like monad. Who spoke about monads? Who spoke about monads?
Let to
John
You
Locke.
studied about monads in the modern philosophy.
Yes, Father.
John Locke, Father. John Locke.
Who?
Not John Locke.
It is not John
John
Locke, you
Locke.
fellow. It is not John Locke. Spoke
Pascal.
about monads.
Not Pascal.
Monads means they are like closed doors and windows. They don't connect with the other. They are called monads.
That's what it is.
And who spoke about monads? You have forgotten everything. I think
David
it was Leibniz.
David
Have you
Hume.
heard that name? Leibniz.
Yes, Father.
yes, Father.
You have forgotten. Rajesh.
Yes, Father.
So we are not monads. Monads are not connected to each other. Whereas for Heidegger, we are open to the other. We live with the other. I share the world with the other. Therefore, I have a responsibility towards the other. Therefore, I have a responsibility towards the other. Therefore, we live in a common world. I don't have a world of my own, individual world. I live in the common world. Mitwelt, common world. World means world. We live in a common world. We are connected to each other. We relate with each other. We communicate with each other. We share our good things, whatever not so good things with the other. We live with the other. Therefore, our world is a common world. Am I clear? So
Yes,
that's
Father.
also a theme which is very, very dominant in existential philosophy. So a theme which is very common in existential philosophy, that is to be with. That's why you see how many of the Heidegger's themes are connected with existential philosophy. Am I making things clear?
Yes, Father.
You see how many of the Heidegger's themes are connected with the themes of existential philosophy. That's why many times Heidegger is connected to, or Heidegger is called as an existential philosopher. But we consider, yes, he's an existential, but he's more a phenomenologist. Am I making things clear to you?
Yes, Father.
Say either yes or no.
Yes, Father.
Yes,
Yes,
Father.
Father.
Yes, Father.
Any questions so far? Any questions? So these are some of the salient features of being in the world. I told you what are the different aspects of being in the world. Being with the other, being with the other. And there you can connect him to Buber and Marcel. We live with the other, our responsibility. Being for death, I explained to you what is being for death. Being has a conscience. I explained to you what is a conscience. And being, which, being, that is called Dasein. Being is there, and these are the qualities of being there. These are the qualities of being there. These are the things which he has elaborated in his book called Being and Time. I'm just giving you this is only an introduction. It's only highlights. But I want you to understand this. Did you understand?
Yes, Father.
Say either yes or no.
Yes, Father.
Yes, Father.
Listen, are you sick, man? You are
Yes,
like
Father.
this one. Are you a corona?
No.
You fellow dangerous man. Do you have fever, man?